Hi, you guys. This is Rachel with Women in Priesthood. Thanks for tuning in. We're kind of doing a follow up today. It's kind of like a sad episode in many ways because I don't love making this kind of content. But I really feel concerned about the LDS community, the influences in the LDS community, and the culture in which my daughter is being raised in, which is one of the reasons why, as a member of the LDS Church and a faithful believing member in the gospel, I want to sound some concerns that I've had on influencers who I think are hurting people's testimonies, which is why I made a video on my website. You can go to YouTube. I made a video called Discerning the Best and Worst Life Coaches, where I ranked. And as you can see, it did pretty well. It's over here. And what I was really surprised by is that the number of people who responded, I was prepared for, like I said, a lot of hate. And I was actually really surprised by the amount of support that I received. A lot of emails and messages that were saying, like, thank you so much for sounding your concerns. I have felt the same way. And then I got a lot of really kind of sad comments. This one was from a woman, and she said, "I'm glad you're calling out Julie Hanks. My daughter got into Julie Hanks and has since then questioned everything about the church. What scares me about her is reading comments from people who are so grateful to her for giving them courage to leave the church, and then she praises them, hiding behind the notion of the church isn't for everyone. At a time of confusion, doubt, crisis, that's exactly what you need. You need the Savior and a community of people who will love you, support you, and uplift you. She drives people away from that and then just leaves. She's not what her followers think she is." And I completely agree. So I think this is a really insightful comment that she's saying. She's showing that a lot of people who follow Julie Hanks also leave the church. And I think this is an interesting trend other people have also noticed. I had someone also comment on that video saying, "I heard of something called the Julie Hanks Challenge. Look up the women you know on social media who have left or distanced themselves from the church and see how many of them follow Julie Hanks. It will basically be 100%. So as a result of this video that I made, Word Radio had me on as a guest, and we played the game where we did that. We looked at you can see that at about an hour into this live stream, and I'll leave that in the links below. We played the game where we had everyone on this live. There were 4 or 5 of us who said, look up everybody you know who's left the church. And it's crazy how, like, you guys should do this. The number of people you know who've left the church, a lot of them follow Julie Hanks. So the question that I have here is, why is it that Julie Hanks's followers leave the church? Why is it that Julie Hanks has become synonymous in the LDS zeitgeist with people leaving the church? Why is that the case? So in answering this question, why do Julie Hanks followers have a tendency to leave the church? It's kind of a question of, is this a correlation or is there a causation here? Meaning, is this a random occurrence that people we know who follow Julie Hanks on Instagram, on social media, on her website, who take her classes, who follow her podcast, is it just random, or is there actually a causal effect that she is there a way that she's behaving or products she's putting out that could explain why there's such a high number of people that we all know socially who have stepped back from the church as a result of her influence? And obviously, we know that everyone's adults here. You can't make anyone do anything. But is there an influence that Julie Hanks is having that is causing a pretty high rate of people to step back from the church? Now, you can see here, she actually offers multiple courses. What I'm going to be doing here is letting her speak for herself, in the sense that let's look at the actual work that she puts out, the actual products, podcasts, courses, paid for courses that she produces, that she's been producing for the last 5 or 6 years, and what kind of courses she produces and puts out on her own, of her own will and volition. Once again, like, no one makes her put this content out. She chooses to make this content. And so I think as members of a community who's concerned about helping people follow the covenant path, it's totally fair for us to look at this content and ask, and kind of come to some conclusions. Is it correlation or is it causation? So we're going to look at this first class that she offers called Stepping Back from the Church, How to Do So in a Psychologically Healthy Way with Dr. Julie Hanks Consulting. I was pretty surprised when I first found this course because it seems so blunt. So I was like, how in the world is an active member of the church charging people money to help them step away from the church? She's kind of orienting herself as a personal life coach for helping you step away from the church, and charging you money for it. So in this course, which this is offered on her website, it's also a podcast, and it's a 4-week class. It's a discussion series. And in this class, she's going to help you navigate how to tackle conversations with family, how to navigate church history and doctrine, feelings of betrayal, and struggles with social justice issues. This is a $2,000 value, but you can get this for a steal of a deal of $170. So I don't know. This just seems like, okay, well, already off the bat, I can see why a lot of people who follow Julie Hanks do end up leaving the church, because she's literally offering courses on how to leave the church, like a step-by-step guide. Okay, so going back into this class that she offers called Stepping Back from the LDS Church, How to Do So in a Psychologically Healthy Way, whatever that means. If you choose to leave, so this is one thing that I notice she says pretty regularly to defend herself. She'll say, I'm not making anyone leave. When someone decides to leave, she celebrates their decision and validates it, and then says, I will help you leave. So she says, if you choose to leave and want to protect your mental health, Valerie and I are hosting, this is Valerie Hamaker, I think. She does a Latter-day Struggles podcast that she kind of collaborates with regularly. She says, Valerie and I are hosting a discussion series just for you. So if you want to leave the church and do so with help, she's going to help you. And this is going to help you to find clarity, set boundaries, maintain relationships, and build community. What she means here is she's going to help you have basically every hard thing that you might confront when you consider leaving the church, breaking your covenants, leaving the gospel community, that you might hold you back from making such an aggressive decision. She's going to help remove those boundaries for you and help you be essentially a life coach on how to leave the church community and break your covenants, navigating changes in relationships and family. And I'm just going to warn you, the podcasts and the articles that come do get more and more sad, because she's essentially helping people make changes in their lives that are going to have a really significant impact on their families and their marriages. One of the things that I also notice is that she always says, I've never told anyone to leave the church. But what she does do is that she celebrates and validates people's decisions to leave the church and encourages that decision. Julie Hanks posted, it takes a lot of courage, quote, courage to leave the church. You are not responsible for your family's feelings as you make your decision. And this is from Reddit. She says, it can feel like it will take a lot of courage to communicate with your family about leaving the church. If you're sitting in a place like many other people leaving, you're probably concerned with how they'll react. The truth is, no matter how they react, you're not responsible for their feelings. They will probably have a lot of intense feelings about you leaving the church, and that's okay. You can listen to their feelings or not. You can validate them, but don't take their response as your own. This is your journey. So her entire philosophy, as she spoke on an interview with Papa Osler, is that you should disregard the concerns of other people in your immediate family when you decide to leave the church. And that seems like a concerning argument to make, but she will help people do that when they decide to leave the church. One of the courses that she offers on her website is called Finding the Middle Ground in the LDS Church. And this is a $50 course in which she argues that she will help you find the middle ground. But when you actually go into the content of what the course offers, I don't actually see that it's offering a middle ground. This seems more like a course that's an exit ramp to the church. She says this course will help you figure out this course will help you figure out if and how you can stay engaged with the church and how to consciously disengage or engage meaningfully. I don't know what that means. It will help you consciously disengage from the church and the gospel. So that is her argument for finding the middle ground in the church, is helping people consciously disengage with the gospel or the church. She's going to answer questions about feelings, church history, and feelings of betrayal, how to talk to your family about shifting beliefs, wanting to engage with the church while still disagreeing with it, how to find middle ground after being raised in a very orthodox way. She uses the word orthodox as a negative connotation pretty regularly. And she also talks about how they'll address garments and temple recommend interviews, which I think is an oddly specific thing, that she coaches people, especially women, how to navigate temple interview questions about garments. This is obviously, she's pretty much the source of women arguing that they shouldn't wear their garments or they shouldn't have to wear their garments, that they get to decide how to do that. She's really the author and source of that. Okay, so coming down to her Instagram, and one of the reasons that I think it's necessary to kind of walk through the content that she produces of her own will and volition. Once again, this is her content from her website. No one made her make this. This is not taken out of context. These are the words that she published, and the courses that she charges money for is how to help members of the church leave the church, and how to help them have conversations with their family members, how to justify it, how to talk to their bishops. And there's not a place where she says, I will help you have faith. That's definitely absent from all of the content. Are you struggling with your faith? I will help you have faith. There's never that element. So this is from her Instagram. And another reason I think it's helpful for women to voice their concerns, I experienced so much support from women on YouTube and on X. A surprising number of women are very concerned in the LDS community about the influence that she's having on our friends, on our young women's leaders, on our young women. And she says in this and I think the reason men are oblivious to that is because they are not perusing and trafficking on social media sites where women are, but I am as a woman. On Instagram, she said, does your faith no longer fit? Have you lost trust in the church? Have you experienced changes in important relationships since your faith shift? Now, if you go back to that original comment that I read from this concerned, sad mother at the beginning, she brings up a really good point. She said, my daughter got into Julie Hanks and has since then questioned everything from the church. And she goes down in her comment and says, she said, one of the most concerning things is to read the comments of support thanking her for helping them leave the church. I have seen multiple people say, Julie Hanks has helped me so much. Because of her, I was able to leave the church. So that's a happy client. Julie Hanks's happiest clients are people who have paid her and have left the church. So already, I think it's pretty obvious. Our original question of, is there correlation? Is it just random? Or is there causation? There's clearly causation here. Julie Hanks can't make any adult women do anything. These women choose of their own will and volition to leave the church, but she certainly assists them and facilitates and eases that pathway to leaving the church by a lot of posts like this. Does your faith no longer fit? Have you lost trust in the church? And then she will usually sell some kind of course. She says, navigating a shift in your faith can be very isolating and bring up multiple uncomfortable emotions. You do not have to face this alone. You'll be surrounded by, join my virtual discussion group, a safe place to discuss the challenges of going through a faith transition or faith expansion. These are words that she uses, faith transition or faith expansion, for a layman's term for basically like having a faith crisis or losing your faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ. She says faith expansion or faith transition. She says, in this course, you'll be surrounded by people who get you and understand the complex emotions and struggles you are facing. For a limited time, use the code TRANSITION to get $50 off this life-changing discussion group. Okay, so she promotes and sells courses and discussion group classes specifically designed and tailored to helping women leave the church if they've lost their confidence. There's never a point where she says, I'm going to help you restore your testimony. She says, I'm going to help you extricate yourself from all of the social and emotional ties related to living the gospel. Okay, so we're going to go through a series of her podcasts, which are not paid for, which are free. And it gets really kind of sad because what happens at this point is once she validates someone's decision to leave the church, she will then walk them through every specific scenario that they will encounter when extricating themselves socially and emotionally from the church. I think it's really important to understand how proactive she is in her content, because one of the things that I predict right now that she will do is one of the things I've encountered. I'm a business owner. Whenever I have caught a manager or someone who's stealing or lying, the first thing that they do to me is they lie and they cry and they say, I would never do that. I had no idea I was having that effect. And Julie Hanks has actually done that already, and I predict she will do that again. She will say, I had no idea that my content was causing people to leave the church. That was never my intention. I just wanted to help people. She's not being honest when she does that, because all of her content is proactively helping people leave the church, and you can tell because she has courses designed to do that. So just watch out for that when she lies and she cries, and she's very good at crying. Just remember that no one made her put out a course called Finding the Middle Ground in the LDS Church, or no one made her put out a course that says stepping for $170, almost $200 said, and the title of the course is Stepping Back from the Church, How to Do So in a Psychologically Healthy Way with Dr. Julie Hanks Consulting. No one made her make those courses. She designed and made those courses herself. Okay, the next series of slides are pretty sad because it's sad to think how the work that she's doing is affecting families, affecting children, and affecting marriages, because faith transitions are enormously disruptive to family structures. In this podcast, she says how to tell family about faith transition. In this episode, Dr. Julie Hanks coaches Michaela and addresses the question, how to tell family about faith transition. She says, talk to your parents and select a time to talk to them. And then basically set boundaries, and then ultimately talks them through the process of disregarding every concern that they might have. How to talk. This podcast, she talks about how can I talk to my spouse about my faith transition. And in this, Dr. Julie Hanks says, is that, she basically coaches someone about how to talk to their spouse. It's usually women talking to men about how they're going to leave the church and how to be okay with their husbands not being okay with that. Pretty regularly, she brings in this dynamic of sexism and making sure you're in an equal partnership with your husband. So if your husband's not happy with you, like breaking your covenants and leaving the church, you can always throw in his face the idea that he's being sexist and they're not in an equal partnership because he might be upset with you leaving the church. Communicating with family about faith transitions. And this is an interview she has with another social media influencer about how to communicate with leaving the church, ways to do it. This is probably the saddest podcast that I ever had to listen to, which is the elephant in the room is how do I handle the fear of temporal and eternal consequences if I leave the church? That's a very real question. If you've made covenants in the temple, if you want the promises of eternal family, in the content of this podcast, she says to this girl, it sounds like you are making decisions based on fear, fear of temporal and eternal consequences. And she encourages this girl to not make decisions out of fear and to not be afraid to make choices out of fear, but to make decisions out of confidence, because maybe the idea that there are temporal and eternal consequences if you leave the church isn't actually true. And so her entire argument is, if you leave the church, there really aren't temporal and eternal consequences, which is really a sad argument to make to someone. And once again, Julie Hanks advertises her services as a member of the church, as an active member of the church. One of the things that I've considered is that in the last days it's prophesied that the wheat and the chaff will grow together. And I wonder if one of the reasons why there's been such a lack of excommunication, a lack of addressing problematic people in our culture, is because the Lord is truly in these last days letting us be discerning as a community. He's calling on us to be loyal to each other and to help each other be discerning about trustworthy figures and untrustworthy figures. And when I see a podcast like this, where you have a member of the church encouraging people to leave the church or helping them feel good about leaving the church by saying that temporal and eternal consequences of breaking your covenants don't exist, I think it's time to say we're pretty justified in being concerned about Julie Hanks's influence on the LDS community. And I don't think she's a trusted voice if you're looking to strengthen your testimony, or if you're looking to reconcile concerns or faith issues you have and questions you have. I think there's better people that you could turn to that could help you reconcile questions you have or restore your faith, which is a normal process that everyone goes through, let alone paying someone to help you just leave the church and disregard your covenants. This is another $55 course she offers, $50 course she offers on her website called Managing Difficult Family Relationships During a Faith Transition. It's really important to note that faith transitions have a pretty high correlation with marriage divorce rates. Mormons don't have a very high success rate when members of their when one of the members of the marriage leave the church. We don't do very well. We do really well in marriage success compared to most Christians and most people. But when you have a member of your marriage leave the church, we actually have a pretty high divorce rate. So it's a big deal if someone leaves the church. And in this course, she basically makes the argument that you should be able to make independent decisions and disregard your spouse's concerns. It's definitely oriented towards a female audience. She also has a mixed faith marriage discussion group where she basically causes chaos and then tries to help people through the chaos by marketing even more money. Thrive is an organization that is kind of meant to offboard people out of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And it's an entire ex-Mormon community that is led by John DeLynn. He announced a couple months ago that she would be a guest speaker. She's down here. And John DeLynn and her are very good friends. And she said that she was going to maybe consider not speaking there, but she ended up speaking and it was pretty successful. I'd probably argue that she is probably offering her services of, those of you who've left, I can help you psychologically detach and heal and all the trauma, quote unquote, that the church has caused you. Again, this is rhetoric that I would expect from an ex-Mormon. This is not rhetoric I would expect from someone who is an active Latter-day Saint in good standing with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And, but I think you can argue that in the last days, the wheat and the chaff will grow together. And so it's up to us as members of the community to help each other. That's what I'm trying to do here. I have a vested interest in making sure that the LDS religion and the church that we belong to is protected in many ways, so that the church that my kids grow up in is allowed to thrive. And that's why I've been motivated to make these videos. It's really meant a lot to me that so many of you have been so supportive and so kind. If you'd like to leave me a comment below about your thoughts on Julie Hanks's influence in the LDS community. I'd love to read them. Also, if you are wanting to send a more personal email, you always can. But yeah, share with me your thoughts. I think it's pretty obvious when we revisit our question, why do her followers leave the church? I think it seems pretty clear that the reason that Julie Hanks's followers leave the church is because she's built a business model offering courses, Instagram posts, podcasts, where she's oriented herself as a personal life coach for how to leave the church. And then she helps and assists and guides people through every step of that process of leaving the church community, the LDS gospel. She validates their faith crisis doubts. She validates their decision to break their covenants. She validates their decision to disregard family members' concerns. The more you delve into her website, and I would encourage you to, I'll leave links to all of these classes and podcasts in the description below. They are extensive. I could have done more than this, but once again, I really do want to thank you all for just your support. You've given me a lot of strength. I have pretty thick skin. I can handle criticism, and I think it's important to sign my name to some criticism that I do put out there. But your support and validation encouraged me to make another video, because I know I'm very much in the majority of men and women in the church who are very concerned about the doctrinal and testimonial negative impact that Julie Hanks is having on members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the impact that she's having on covenant families, on covenant marriages, the detrimental effect she's having. And as members of the church, I think it's important that we be allowed to have these open discussions. And, once again, no one made her put out this kind of content. She chose to make this content. She chose to make these courses and charge people money for them. And this is how she makes her business. She has a very lucrative business. So at the end of the day, I think we can assume that, is Julie Hanks, why do her followers leave the church? Is it a question of correlation or causation? There's definitely a causal effect that she has. So anyway, I really want to bear you my testimony that I am so grateful as a woman to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I am grateful to know that I am a daughter of God. I am grateful to know that families and eternal families can be together forever. I believe that the atonement of Jesus Christ can help us through any kind of faith questions without having to break our covenants or leave the gospel. And I really do believe that God gives us grace for our journey without having to pay people to help us break our covenants. So I would encourage you to turn to someone that you trust, someone who has been there for you, someone who will be with you in your life in a physical form based on the decisions that you make. Because someone like Julie Hanks is happy to take your money, but she's not going to be there for you when when your family life is falling apart and as a result of these kinds of decisions. So I'm excited to see your comments below. Again, thanks for all of your support. It's given me a lot of courage and validation to know that we are on the right path in sounding the alarm about her quote unquote work out there, and seeing that her version of helping people is leading them off the covenant path. Anyway, thanks for being here, guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.